And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Survive Space Attack. Now Survive is a 30-year-old game that was recently printed in the last few years from Stronghold Games, a game in which an island was sinking, or the Atlantis was sinking basically, and you had to get people off it and avoid sharks and whales and sea monsters. This is a sequel. I would say it's more like a revamping of the original game with the Engelsteins. Brian Sidney and Jeff have added some changes and things to it. It is very similar to the original game, but what are the differences? Or if you've never played the original game, how does this play? I shall show you. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to set up the board. The board starts with a couple of giant amoeba monsters in different spots on the board, but you're also going to build the space station. Now the space station is made up of different tiles, and these different tiles have different thicknesses. You can see some are thick, some are thin, and some are medium. It doesn't really matter which ones you put anywhere, but you're going to take these and place them in this white outlined area. The other side of the board does not have a white outlined area, so you can put different scenarios that the book has. But for the basic game, the one that most people are going to play, you're going to fill this up and make a space station. Now I set these people up randomly, but people will take their turn putting these folks out, because on the back side of each person, underneath, it shows a number, and that number goes from 1 to 6. You have several 1s, but there's a 5. There's a fewer of the bigger numbers. And what your goal is in the course of this game is this space station's exploding. You need to get these guys into these vehicles and get them to one of these warp gates and get them out of there. Oh yeah. I didn't put out the last 4 big space monsters. These are amoebas. I think maybe they're supposed to sit like this on the board. I'm not sure. Anyhow, on your turn, what you will do first is you will move crew tokens, if you have them left alive. So you have 3 movement. So I could do this maybe. I could go 1, 2, 3 on my turn. If I'm in a spaceship, one of these escape pods, I can move those. I can move those even if someone else is in it. Maybe Yellow Gattle, he's coming along for the ride. I can move them if there's no one in it. I can move them so they come back to get me. Sometimes your space people will be adrift out in the, the void. You can move them 1. They got a spacesuit on, but that's all you can move them. You can't move them more than 1 on your turn. Now after you've done that, then you're going to blow up part of the space station. You will do that by picking whatever the thinnest current tile. So the thinnest ones at first are these ones with these little explosions on. So I pick that. I take a look at the other side of this tile. Sometimes this tile will have me put something on the board. Usually those are greens. You have to play those right away. Some let you, and some of them you keep for later on. This is one that I can keep later on. It lets me change one creature into another creature. Sometimes when you pull a tile, again, this is another red one that I can keep and use for a special one. I can switch somebody. Sometimes when you pull it, it has to be next to open space somehow. This one here will instantly put out a fighter craft in that same area. Whenever you take a tile, if there's anyone on that tile, they will fall into outer space. Ha ha ha. So players are doing this and they're trying to get their people to safety. Once you have them over here, you can put them, go from here to here, and at the end of the game they're going to be worth that many points to you. So you want to use these spaceships, get your people, and get back. Then you'll take the tile. After the tile is done, you then get to roll the die. You roll the die, and whatever monster you roll on the die, if there's a monster of that type on the board, you get to move it. Now there are 3 types of monsters on the board. There are the really big giant queens, and then there are the small spawns and the warriors. Now the queens can only move 1, but wherever they move, everything that they hit is gone. They move there, that guy's gone. They move there, that ship's gone. They can't move onto these tiles, but they can destroy both ships and people. The warriors, they can move up to 3 spaces, and they can only blow up ships. So they won't. So this ship here, has a bunch of people in it, and this guy moves in, he'll destroy the ship, but the people are still there. The Spawn, on the other hand, he can't hurt ships, but whenever he moves into a spot, he will kill those people, and they're removed from the game. So there'll be a lot of people who will be killed over the course of this game. You have some recourse to this, though, so that's your whole turn. But if you have a fighter and have someone in a ship, you can spend one move to move that fighter in a straight line, and every monster in that area that you go to is destroyed. At the beginning of your next turn, you can put out these monsters anywhere on the board as long as there's an empty space to put them in. You have 3 actions on your turn. Usually you use those for movement, but there's these guns on the board, and when you can shoot a gun, and if there's a monster in a straight line from that gun, you kill it, and again at the beginning of your next turn, you will put that out. You also have tiles that you can play on your turn and do different things, like this one here. When I can change a monster to another. There's ones that let you switch. There are tiles that will have, most of these monsters here will show up on the board as a result of tiles. And there's ways to make monsters change in other monsters. Other ships will show up. Once you're done destroying all the small type, then you start going and destroying this type of tile. And then you go and destroy the big fat tiles. And then eventually you'll destroy the ones with the guns on them. Some of them are black holes which kill everything next to them, but one of them here, when this tile is drawn, the whole space station explodes. Anyone who's not in one of these corners automatically is dead at that point, and you count the number of things on the bottom of yours, and whoever has the most is the winner of the game. There's a couple other things and scenarios you can play. You can also play where instead of counting the points at the bottom, just each person's worth 1. But that would not be very class savvy. Some people are just more important than others when you're getting free. But anyhow, that's how you play the game. Okay, first of all, if you've never played Survive before, this is just as good of a way to get into the series as any of the other games. I think this is fine, and I'm going to try not to compare this to Survive the whole time, but at the same time, I have to. This is essentially a reworking of the original game. Now, the theme was changed, and you guys know, if you've watched enough of my videos, I'm a huge space theme. I love space themes. I'm a space theme fanatic. I like space stations and fights and all that. At the same time, the original theme for Survive was great. The sinking of Atlantis, I love that theme. I don't know that the theme needed to be changed or worked on. I didn't know that Survive needed more stuff added to it. I'm not opposed to any of that, but that's what this is. This is Survive with a lot more tiles, which you'll have to be looking up in the book for a while because they're not all intuitive as what they do. You'll figure it out after a while, but you'll be constantly passing the rule book around and say, what does this tile do again? And it also has more ways to blow monsters up, put them on the board. This is a much more vicious version of Survive, and Survive was pretty vicious to begin with. Now, that being said, the game is very fun and entertaining. You're trying to get your people out, so you'll jump. You don't want to put all 3 of your guys in the same rescue ship because then everyone will go out of their way to make sure that rescue ship is destroyed. You need to be very careful as you fly your people out because at any point monsters can show up. At the same time, those fighters can be pretty handy. Sure, a fighter's a good way to get somebody to escape. Just get in it, go in a straight line, you'll get out and escape. But if you stay in that fighter, not only can you take out monsters, although the monsters can get your fighter too, but you can also, once you take those monsters out, place those monsters away from you and towards other folk. And so there's a lot of that back and forth, and there's those guns on the ship. I put a guy in one of those guns, I'm using that gun, and I'm going to blow up any alien who happens to be within sight, and I'm going to then use those and put them away from me and towards other folk. But still, I think the death ratio in this game is much higher than the others. There's a few saving graces from getting destroyed. There's some of the tiles now have a reaction. Someone's about to attack you with the big queen. You can say, no, I'm moving the queen 4 spaces this way. Or I'm gonna move the warrior this direction. And I like that, and that's entertaining. It's not as intuitive as the original one. The original one was like, oh, sharks eat people, whales destroy boats. Here it's like, oh yeah, these blue ones, and I call them whales a lot. The blue warriors are blowing up ships, but not eating the people. And they were kind of ugly shapes, just ugly blobular shapes. I don't know what, this is one of those times where I think maybe plastic would have looked better than the wooden shapes, but the people, the little people running around, and the space station itself, and the board, those look great. This is a mean game, all right? It's only for 4 players. Although there's a mini expansion that adds a 5th and 6th player, and you can certainly do that, and that's even meaner. But it's a mean, fun, family-style game. This is about the meanest I would recommend probably for families to get together, but you are blowing stuff up and working together to make sure monsters go and take out this ship, and I find that sort of thing highly entertaining. It's a very well-designed, good product. I'm still not convinced it was necessary to have a space version of the game, but I don't dislike it. It's fun and entertaining, and some people may play this who weren't intrigued by the Atlantis one. If you have the original Survive, you don't really need this one. You don't need both of them, I think, unless you want space. But if you don't have either, this is a good one to check out. You will enjoy it, you'll have a lot of fun, and it is kind of fun to send other people's astronauts off into who knows where, into the depths of the Queen's stomach. That's entertaining. Lots of fun. Survive Space Attack. Dice Tower Judgment. Approved!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door. There? There.